and perhaps even Iran, and a lot of other people who would have been in France marching in that 700,000 person rally. And I think that is because just because people are oppressed does not make them, are part of an oppressed nation does not make them revolutionary. And people who are sharpshooting is part of an oppressed nation. And he shows up, you know, I mean, he comes to a mobilization of thousands of people out there, and he speaks for the African people. And so just because people are part of an oppressed nation doesn't make them revolutionary. And because people cannot rely on the masses, on the people, for transformation, they rely instead on their relationship with imperial powers. If not France, they want to get along. They would like, because the French people, I think France is an entity that united with Palestine's effort to come go to the International Criminal Court, or some international thing that Palestine was involved in doing. And so it looks diplomatically for France and other European countries and people to support them for those efforts. They don't have the ability to rely on people to make the revolutionary transformation, so they rely primarily on their relationship with other governments and other people, you see. And so don't be surprised if you even see some people from Arab countries and Asian countries that's walking there. And the other thing is that people abhor violence. Everybody abhors violence. And the problem is that what gets lost from us many times is the recognition that there would be no basis for any violence by Arabs or Muslims in Paris, except for what Paris has done to Arabs and Muslims, and what France is doing right now to Arabs and Muslims. There would be no basis. There would be absolutely crazy for a group of people, and these are people who grew up in France. And some of the people who grew up there are people who came from Algeria. Their parents were born in Algeria under French occupation that murdered and killed a lot of people. They got a real problem in France because some 10% of the population at least is Muslim. And many of them who are Muslim are not just people who were born in North Africa, but some of them, they got a problem because many of the white people in France are converting to Islam. So you know, much of what they have to deal with is contending with all of this. They refer often Europe is referred to as Eurabia, right? Because so many people are coming from Arab countries. And they're coming from Arab countries there because white people in Europe are not reproducing enough to have workers there. So they're recruiting workers that from the Arab countries that's coming there. But when the people from Arab countries come there, they don't stop being Arabs. They don't stop being Muslims. They don't become like white people and things like that. So they come, they bring Islam with them, they bring their traditions with them, they bring all this other stuff with them, which is why France is saying you can't wear your headscarf, you know, you can't do anything that shows that you are Muslim in public spaces. So they got a real contradiction there, and it's not going to be resolved by 700,000 people marching. And I guarantee you what you're going to see more and more, they're going to see fewer and fewer people willing to participate in those marches, because France is going to have to come face to face with its own history, its own reality. And one reason it's going to have to come face to face, let me tell you this, that right now France, it controls something like 14 different African so-called countries and states. That in order to become independent, quote unquote, from France, they had to sign a colonial pact. And the colonial pact requires them to do all that trading with France. France controls the currency. France receives automatically from those countries 65% of the reserve resources go directly to the French treasury, 65%. And another 20%, France charges them for handling the 65%. Are you with me now? So that's 85% of the gross domestic product of 14 different so-called African countries go straight into the French treasury, leaving people only 5% to live on, and once the neo-colonial puppets put there by France gets its cut, then the people are lucky to try to live off 3% of what it is they produce. So they never have enough money. So how do they get money to try to live? They borrow it. Who do they borrow it from? France. So they borrow their own money from France to try to survive. That's the setup that they got. And you know what? The African heads, so-called heads of state, in these 14 different so-called states, they are afraid, they don't know how much money that they have in French treasuries. And they are afraid to ask France, how much money? Talk about free speech? They can't ask France, how much of our money do you have? Because if you do, France then will overthrow them. Like it did Gbagbo in Ivory Coast. It's invaded Mali and other places like that. France controls the economy, and so the people there are starving. 14 different so-called Francophone states, starving and feeding French people. The ones that are marching down the streets, 700,000 strong in defense of free speech, are being fed by starving people in those 14 different countries. So anyway, that's the objective reality. I'm saying that there is an objective truth. And you can discover this. You can discover an objective truth that explains these relationships that we have. And our responsibility is to make people force this objective truth so they can start hiding behind these fairy tales that's being given to us as some kind of history, etc. Uhuru.